The studio lights were blinding. The cameras, the murmuring crew, the endless noise. All of it felt heavier than usual that day. Jamie Dornan sat across from the interviewer, the kind smile he'd worn for years slowly slipping away. He looked older, quieter, like someone carrying a secret he could no longer contain. He had done hundreds of interviews before. He knew how to deflect, how to smile through uncomfortable questions. But this one was different. The interviewer leaned forward, voice calm but sharp. "Jamie, you're 43 now. At the height of your career. But lately, you've been quieter. Distant. Is there something you've been hiding from your fans?" For a moment, Jamie didn't move. He stared at the floor, then exhaled slowly. "Yes," he said at last, his voice barely above a whisper. "And I think it's time people knew." The room fell silent. Even the hum of the lights seemed to fade. What he said next would echo far beyond that small studio. For years, the world had seen Jamie as the perfect man, the handsome star, the devoted husband, the doting father, the actor who seemed to have it all. But what no one saw was what happened when the cameras stopped rolling. He remembered the first time the fear hit him. It wasn't on a red carpet, or a set, or a crowded event. It was at home, alone in the dark. He'd woken in the middle of the night, drenched in sweat, heart pounding. He couldn't breathe. For minutes, he sat on the edge of the bed, gripping the sheets, trying to convince himself it was just exhaustion. But it wasn't. It was something deeper, something that had been buried for decades. Growing up in Belfast, Jamie had known loss earlier than most. When he was 16, his mother died of cancer. He'd been the quiet one, the one who tried to stay strong for everyone else. But inside, he broke. The day they buried her, he remembered staring at the coffin and thinking, "I'll never let myself feel this pain again." That silent promise would haunt him for the rest of his life. Through the years, fame became his armor. Interviews, awards, photo shoots, each one another layer of distraction. He learned to smile when he wanted to scream, to look calm when the weight of his own thoughts felt unbearable. And for a while, it worked. The world saw the version of him he wanted them to see, confident, charming, untouchable. But when he turned 43, something began to change. He started forgetting lines on set. He'd stare into mirrors backstage and feel like he was looking at a stranger. Sleep became impossible. He'd lie awake for hours, replaying moments from the past, his mother's voice, his father's final phone call before passing, the quiet regrets he never spoke aloud. The truth was simple, but terrifying. He had spent his entire life pretending he was fine. He had always told himself that grief fades, that time heals. But what no one told him was that pain, when ignored, doesn't disappear. It just hides, waiting for the right moment to resurface. One night, while filming a scene that required him to cry, he couldn't stop. The tears kept coming, long after the director yelled cut. The crew stood in silence as he broke down on set, not because of the character, but because, for the first time in decades, he had stopped acting. After that day, he disappeared for weeks. No public appearances, no interviews, no social media posts. Friends said he was taking a break. But inside, Jamie was confronting something darker. He started therapy quietly, away from the cameras. There, in a small room with no spotlight, he began to speak about things he had buried since childhood, the guilt, the fear, the loneliness. And now, here he was, sitting in front of the world again, finally ready to tell them. The interviewer leaned in, sensing the weight of the moment. "So, what is the truth, Jamie?" Jamie looked up, his eyes glassy but steady. The words came slowly, each one heavy with years of silence. "The truth," he said, "is that I've been living with fear for most of my life. Fear of loss, fear of failure, fear of being truly seen. I thought if I worked hard enough, smiled long enough, I could outrun it. But you can't outrun what's inside you." He paused, his hands clasped tightly. The air was thick, unbroken. "At 43, I realized something terrifying," he continued. "I don't really know who I am when I'm not pretending to be someone else." The interviewer didn't speak. No one did. Jamie's voice cracked as he added, I think I've been hiding behind characters my whole life. And maybe, for the first time, I just want to be me. The cameras kept rolling, but for once, Jamie Dornan wasn't performing. He was finally telling the truth, and that truth, raw and unfiltered, was far more powerful than any role he had ever played. When the interview ended, the studio fell completely still. No one spoke, no one dared. Jamie sat there, hands clasped, breathing deeply as if he had just run a marathon he didn't know he'd been training for all his life. The cameras stopped rolling, but the silence stayed. The crew exchanged glances. No one had expected this. Jamie stood slowly, his eyes red but clear. The weight that had clung to him for years seemed to shift, not gone, but lighter somehow. He walked out into the evening air, the city buzzing faintly beyond the glass walls of the building. For the first time in a long while, he felt the wind on his face and didn't try to hide from it. That night, he didn't go home immediately. He drove through London without direction, past glowing streets and empty cafes, until he reached the edge of the river. The water shimmered beneath the streetlights, calm and indifferent. He parked, got out, and stood there, listening to the hum of life around him. He thought of his mother. He thought of his father. He thought of all the moments he had pretended to be strong when all he wanted was to fall apart. You can stop running now, he whispered to himself. The next morning, the clip from the interview began spreading online. Within hours, it went viral. Headlines exploded across social media. Jamie Dornan's emotional confession stuns fans. Millions of viewers watched him speak with raw honesty. No PR polish, no rehearsed lines. People didn't see a movie star anymore. They saw a man, fragile and human, just like them. Messages flooded his inbox, from fans, from friends, from strangers who had felt the same silent fear. Thank you for saying what we couldn't, one message read. You made me realize it's okay to be broken. Jamie didn't reply to most of them, but he read every word. For once, he didn't feel alone in his pain. Weeks passed, and he began to rebuild quietly. He took long walks in the mornings before the city woke. He learned to sit in silence without running from it. He spent more time with his wife and daughters, no cameras, no schedules, just life happening in small, real moments. He started therapy more seriously, not because he was broken, but because he finally wanted to understand himself beyond the roles he played. The sessions weren't easy. Sometimes he cried, sometimes he said nothing at all, but each time he left that small room, he felt a little more like himself. In one of those sessions, his therapist asked him a simple question. What does being Jamie Dornan mean when you're not acting? He laughed, then paused. I don't know yet, he admitted. But I think I'm finally ready to find out. For the first time in decades, he wasn't chasing a script or a spotlight. He was chasing peace. Months later, he returned to work, not because he had to, but because he wanted to. His next project wasn't a blockbuster or a high-budget thriller. It was a small, personal film about loss and healing. When the director asked why he chose it, Jamie smiled faintly. Because it's real, he said. And because I finally want to tell stories that feel like me. During filming, something remarkable happened. In one scene, his character had to face his own reflection. A simple shot, yet deeply symbolic. The camera rolled, and Jamie looked into the mirror. For once, he didn't see the polished actor or the carefully built persona. He saw a man who had faced the darkest corners of himself and survived. When the director yelled, "Cut," the crew applauded quietly. They didn't know why, but they felt it, the authenticity, the truth bleeding through the screen. Later, in an interview, Jamie was asked again about that viral confession, the terrifying truth that had shaken fans around the world. He smiled thoughtfully. I think the real terror, he said, wasn't in what I confessed. It was in hiding it for so long. Pretending to be fine. That's the real fear we all live with. He leaned forward, his voice soft but steady. I used to think strength meant keeping everything inside. Now I know it means letting people see you as you are, imperfect, scared, human. That's where healing begins. The host nodded, visibly moved. So, what would you tell your younger self, the boy who promised never to feel pain again? Jamie paused, eyes glistening. I'd tell him, it's okay to feel everything. The pain, the love, the fear. That's what makes you alive. There was a long silence. Then he smiled. Not the guarded smile of a celebrity, but the quiet, honest smile of a man who had finally made peace with himself. And maybe that was the real shocking truth all along. That behind every perfect image is a heart that's been cracked, healed, and learned to keep beating anyway.